The council chamber was filled with light and sound. Dozens of alien races sat in their high thrones, their eyes glittering, their voices cold. They spoke in strange tones, judging, laughing, whispering. At the edge of the chamber stood a small group of humans, their faces pale, their eyes burning with silent anger. They had come as survivors, not as equals. Earth had burned. The memory lived inside every one of them. Great cities once full of life had turned into shadows of fire. Towers melted, oceans boiled, and the sky itself cracked under the assault of the Zhirth. The enemy had come without warning, a swarm of jagged black ships blotting out the stars. The humans had fought with everything they had, old fleets, stubborn courage, desperate plans, but the weight of the invaders was too much. Earth fell, billions perished, the galaxy had watched. The other races of the Alliance did nothing. They called it a necessary loss, a lesson for the young species who had dared to rise so quickly. Some even laughed, saying, "The humans are reckless. They play with fire and now are burned." The pain of those words was deeper than the fire that had consumed their home. Admiral Cale Stone, one of the survivors, stood in silence as the aliens debated. He wore no grand uniform now, only the simple dark jacket of a soldier without a world. His eyes did not lower, even when taller beings sneered down at him. He had seen the impossible. He had walked through the ashes of Earth, and he knew something they did not. Humanity was not finished. Beside him stood Mara Vance, a pilot who had escaped the fall. She had lost her family in the firestorm over New York. Her hands trembled at times, but her voice never did. "They think we are gone," she whispered to Cale, her voice like steel under ice. "But they don't understand. We still breathe. And as long as we breathe, we fight." The aliens in the chamber spoke of politics, of strategy, of keeping peace. They spoke of humans as though they were broken tools, not people. To them, humanity was already history. But in the shadows of that hall, the survivors remembered something different. They remembered the screams, the flames, the shattered sky. They remembered the courage of those who had stayed behind to buy time. They remembered Earth. For years after the fall, survivors hid among asteroids, on dead moons, in broken stations drifting through the dark. They gathered scraps of metal, fragments of alien weapons, and pieces of wrecked ships. They learned, they adapted, they built. Children grew in the silence of hidden bunkers, hearing stories not of defeat, but of vengeance. Hope burned quietly in the darkness, like a coal waiting for air. Kyle carried this fire in his chest. He spoke rarely, but every word struck like a blade. "They believe Earth is dead," he said one night to the survivors. "But Earth lives in us. Every drop of blood, every scar, every memory, it is Earth. And one day, we will rise again." And so the survivors prepared. In secret. They forged armadas of steel. They twisted pain into power, grief into determination. Their ships were not beautiful like those of the other races. They were raw, brutal, forged for war. Each vessel carried the names of the fallen: New Dawn, Ashes, Redemption, Valkyrie. The survivors poured their souls into them, knowing these. Ships were not only weapons, but graves of memory. Years passed. The Council no longer spoke of Earth. They thought humanity was scattered dust, lost to time. But far from their shining worlds, in the cold silence of forgotten space, a new storm was rising. Humanity had not died. Humanity had transformed. And when the time came, when the black swarm of the Zhirth returned to strike again, it was not the grand fleets of the Alliance that moved to stop them. It was the humans, the ones who had been laughed at, scorned, and abandoned. The galaxy would soon learn a truth they had forgotten. Fire may destroy, but it also forges. Earth had burned, but from its ashes humanity would rise stronger than ever, carrying not just the memory of loss, but the fury of survival. The council had laughed when Earth burned, but the laughter would end, because the survivors were coming back. The survivors of Earth scattered like sparks from a dying flame. Some found shelter on abandoned mining stations, others on broken moons forgotten by the galaxy. Yet among the ruins of silence, something powerful began to grow. Humanity had lost its home, but not its will. Every child born after the fall carried a fire inside them, a quiet anger, and a promise whispered by their parents. Never forget Earth. Admiral Cale Stone became the heart of this broken people. He was not the kind of man who shouted or gave long speeches. He carried his grief like a blade, sharp and heavy, and those around him felt its weight. Survivors listened when he spoke, because his eyes held both sorrow and certainty. "We are not finished," he would say, his voice steady. "We are building something they cannot imagine." Mara Vance, the pilot who had once flown through the fire of Earth's last battle, became Cale's shadow and flame. She trained young pilots in secret hangars, her voice harsh but filled with care. She taught them not only how to fly, but how to survive, how to twist fear into fuel. "Courage is not the absence of fear," she would tell them, standing beneath the hull of a half-built ship. "Courage is flying even when your hands shake." The children listened, wide-eyed, their small fists clenched with determination. Survivors worked in silence, hidden from the eyes of the Alliance and the Zirth. They used asteroid belts as shields, hollowing them out into secret shipyards. Metal groaned as new vessels were forged, their shapes sharp and rugged, unlike the elegant designs of alien fleets. Humanity did not build ships to display beauty. They built ships to endure. Every hull was scarred with the memory of fire. Every engine hummed with the rage of loss. They named their ships after the broken pieces of their past. Ashes, Revenant, Valkyrie, New Dawn. The names carried stories, each one a promise to the dead. When welders burned steel and sparks flew, they whispered the names of lost families, lost cities, lost dreams. The ships became floating graves, but also burning torches for vengeance. The children grew quickly. They did not play in gardens or under blue skies. They learned in tunnels carved from stone, in classrooms made from broken cargo bays. Their lullabies were not gentle songs, but the hum of engines and the steady voice of their teachers. They studied alien technology stolen from wreckage, taking it apart and rebuilding it in ways even the other races had never thought of. Humans were not the oldest or the strongest, but they were stubborn, and they learned fast. Cale often walked through the shipyards, his boots echoing against metal floors. He watched young engineers argue over circuits, pilots running simulations with fierce concentration, soldiers training until sweat soaked their uniforms. He never smiled, but inside him a quiet pride grew. They were no longer scattered survivors. They were becoming something new, a hidden force, born from pain, sharpened by loss. Yet in the council halls of the galaxy, humans were forgotten. The other races called them a dead species, a warning of what happens when ambition grows too fast. Some mocked their memory, saying, "Humans burned because they did not respect the stars." They believed the survivors were nothing but ghosts wandering the dark. But the ghosts were gathering. In the deepest part of their hidden base, Cale stood before a great holographic map. The stars glowed faintly, and the path of the Zirth spread like a shadow across the galaxy. His officers gathered around him, their faces pale but determined. Mara was at his side, her hands clenched behind her back. "They will come again," Kyle said. His voice was quiet, but every word struck deep. "They believe us gone. They believe Earth was the end of us. But they are wrong. When they return, they will not find prey. They will find us waiting." Silence filled the room, heavy with promise. Then Mara spoke, her eyes bright with fire. When they come, Admiral, they will see Earth in our ships, in our weapons, in every strike we deliver. They will know that humanity does not vanish. We rise. And so the survivors worked harder. Engines roared in secret hangars, sparks danced across steel, and the hum of creation filled the silence of the void. Each passing year, the hidden fleets grew stronger. Each passing year, the pain of loss became the fuel of determination. The galaxy laughed when Earth burned. But in the shadows, something far more dangerous than laughter was born. Humanity was no longer a young race seeking approval. They had become a storm waiting in silence. One day, that storm would break. And when it did, the stars themselves would. Remember the fire of Earth, not as an ending, but as the beginning of something unstoppable. The hidden human fleets were ready. Years of silence, years of building in the shadows had forged something the galaxy did not expect. The survivors had learned to turn sorrow into strength, and now their armadas waited in the dark, their engines quiet, their weapons sharp. Humanity was no longer broken. They were patient predators, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. It was Mara Vance who first saw the chance. She sat inside the command center of the Valkyrie, eyes fixed on a glowing display of the stars. Reports arrived from their scouts. Small groups of Zirth raiders had begun attacking the edges of Alliance space again. They moved with arrogance, certain no one dared to challenge them. The other races begged the Council for help, but the Council only argued, as they always did. No fleet was sent, no protection offered. Mara turned to Admiral Kale Stone. "This is it?" she said. "The Zirth think no one will stand against them. Let us show them Earth still breathes." Kale's eyes narrowed, calm but fierce. He had been waiting for this moment since the flames consumed his home. "Then we move," he replied. His voice was quiet, but every officer in the room felt the weight of it. Orders spread across the hidden bases. Engines lit up, one after another, until the void itself seemed to tremble with the sound of human resolve. The fleet emerged from the shadows, like ghosts of vengeance. The ships were not smooth or elegant like the fleets of other races. They were raw, scarred, patched, with metal from 100 wrecks. But they were powerful. Their weapons glowed with stolen alien energy, reforged into human design. Each ship bore the names of the dead, glowing across their hulls like scars turned into fire. The Zirth raiders did not expect resistance. They laughed in their strange, guttural voices when the human fleet appeared. To them, humanity was extinct, a burned memory. But when the first human missiles tore through their hulls, the laughter ended. Mara's voice rang clear through the comms. "For Earth!" The fleet answered with fire. Torpedoes screamed across the void. Cannons thundered. Human pilots dived through enemy formations with reckless skill, using maneuvers no alien race dared attempt. They turned fear into daring, desperation into courage. The Zirth had size and strength, but the humans had something sharper. Rage sharpened by memory. The battle blazed across the stars. Ships burned, fragments of metal scattered like ashes. The humans fought with a fury that shocked even themselves. Kale stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie, his hands steady on the command rail. Every order he gave was precise, every risk carefully chosen. He did not fight for victory alone. He fought to send a message. When the last Zirth ship exploded, silence filled the void. The wreckage of the enemy drifted among the stars, and the human fleet floated, scarred but alive. Voices rose in cries of triumph, but Kyle did not smile. He looked out at the burning debris and whispered, "This is only the beginning." Word spread across the galaxy. At first, no one believed it. Rumors claimed that a human fleet had risen from the ashes and destroyed a Zirth raiding force. The Council dismissed it as lies, but as more reports came, as more Zirth ships vanished into silence, the galaxy could not ignore the truth. Humanity was alive. Humanity was fighting back. In the halls of the council, whispers turned to fear. The races that had mocked humans now argued in panic. Some called them reckless, dangerous. Others said they were saviors, the only ones willing to face the monsters in the dark. But none could deny it anymore. Earth's children had returned, and they carried vengeance in their hands. Mara stood with Kyle after the battle, her face lit by the fading glow of stars. She placed a hand on the cold metal wall of the Valkyrie and whispered, "Do you hear them, Admiral? The dead? They are with us." Kyle nodded, his voice heavy but strong. "They will always be with us, and with every battle the galaxy will hear their voices too." The survivors did not celebrate long. They knew the Zhirth would not forget this insult. A storm was coming, greater than any they had faced before. But humanity was ready. They had been tempered by fire, hardened by loss, united by grief. They no longer fought only for survival. They fought for memory, for justice, for Earth. The galaxy had thought humans were gone. But now, the stars themselves carried their message. Humanity rises from ashes, and they do not rise quietly. The first strike had been made. The silence of survival had ended, and the roar of humanity had begun. The galaxy no longer laughed. The whispers had spread from star to star, from council halls to marketplaces, from soldiers to children. Humanity had returned. The race thought lost in fire was now a storm of steel and fury. Some alien worlds cheered, others trembled, but all spoke of the same name, Earth. Admiral Cale Stone stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie, staring at the stars beyond the glass. The hum of engines filled the air, steady and calm. His officers worked around him, their faces pale but focused. They had won their first true battle against the Zhirth, but Cale knew victory was only a spark. A spark could light fire, yes, but it could also draw the attention of the darkness. And the darkness was coming. Mara Vance entered the bridge, her uniform stained with oil from the hangars. She carried her helmet under one arm, her eyes tired, yet bright with fire. "The pilots are restless," she said. "They celebrate, but beneath the smiles, they know. The Zhirth will not forgive." Cale's gaze remained on the stars. "Good. Let them know. Let them feel the weight of what we've begun. Hope is not born from safety. It is born from fear, and the choice to stand anyway." Mara fell silent, watching him. She had flown beside him in battle, had seen the calm in his eyes when all else was chaos. To the younger pilots, Kyle was a symbol. To her, he was something more, a reminder that even in ruin, leadership could still burn like a beacon. The humans had established hidden bases across unclaimed sectors. Asteroids became fortresses, barren moons became supply stations, drifting hulks became training grounds. Everywhere they went, survivors gathered. Farmers who had lost their fields now learned to weld steel. Children who had never seen Earth learned to fly. The people did not need promises of paradise. They needed a reason to fight, and Earth itself was enough. Yet fear lingered in every shadow. In secret, some asked, "What if we are too few? What if the Zhirth are endless?" Mothers held their children closer. Engineers worked sleepless nights. Soldiers trained until their muscles screamed. Fear was their constant companion, but it was also their sharpest weapon. For no other race in the galaxy had learned to live with fear the way humans had. In the council, the alien races argued. Some demanded that the human fleets be destroyed before they grew too strong. Others whispered of alliances, of begging the survivors to lead where they themselves were too afraid. Still, the council did nothing. They feared both sides, the endless hunger of the Zhirth and the furious resilience of humanity. One evening, Cale called his commanders together. They gathered in the war room, the map of the stars glowing across the table. Lines of red showed the spread of the Zhirth, like a disease eating its way across the galaxy. Blue lines showed the hidden paths of human fleets. The Zhirth. "Believe us weak," Kale said, his voice steady. "They believe Earth's fire destroyed us, but we are not ashes. We are iron forged in flame. Every battle from now on is not only survival, it is a message. They must learn fear." The officers nodded, their faces grim. Mara leaned forward, her eyes locked on the largest red mark on the map. "Then we take the fight to them. A raid, deep in their territory. Not defense, attack. Let them know humanity is not prey." The room fell silent. The risk was immense. To strike so boldly would expose their fleets, reveal their strength and their position. But Kyle's eyes hardened. "Yes, we strike. Not because it is safe, but because it is necessary. They must understand. We do not hide forever. We will meet them in their own darkness." And so, preparations began. Engines were tuned, weapons loaded, strategies drawn. Pilots wrote letters to the families they might never see again. Soldiers carved Earth's name into the walls of their barracks. Engineers painted symbols of flame and wings across the hulls of ships. Every man and woman knew the danger, yet none turned away. The eve of departure, Kale walked the hangars. He saw the young faces of pilots standing beside their craft, the hands of mechanics black with grease, the tired smiles of soldiers ready to fight. He stopped before Mara, who stood by her fighter, helmet in hand. "Are you ready?" he asked. Her answer was simple but filled with fire. "I was ready the day Earth burned. The fleet moved out. Hundreds of ships slipped into the void, silent and sharp. They carried not only weapons, but the weight of memory, the cries of the fallen, the strength of the living. The Zhirth believed they hunted ghosts. Soon they would learn that ghosts can strike back. Humanity was no longer just surviving. Humanity was becoming a storm, and storms do not whisper. They roar. The shadows of fear followed them into the stars, but the humans carried something stronger within their hearts. Fear could not break them. Fear had made them unbreakable, and when the next battle came, the galaxy would see it clearly. Earth had burned, but humanity had risen, and they were ready to burn the darkness in return. The human fleet drifted like a storm cloud in the silence of space. Hundreds of ships, scarred and patched, held their formation with iron discipline. Their engines glowed faintly, their weapons charged, every hull carrying the weight of Earth's memory. They were heading deep into enemy territory, far beyond the safe paths of the galaxy. On the bridge of the Valkyrie, Admiral Kale Stone stood tall, his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes never left the star map before him. Each red mark showed the presence of the Zhirth, spreading like infection across the void. Somewhere in that darkness lay their target, a massive supply outpost, the heart of the Zhirth raiding fleet. Mara Vance stood at his side, her helmet under her arm. Her sharp eyes scanned the glowing lines of enemy patrols. "They won't expect us this far into their shadow," she said. "But if we fail, Admiral, there will be no retreat." Kale's voice was calm, heavy with resolve. "Then we do not fail." The order spread. Across the fleet, pilots strapped into fighters, engineers sealed armor plating, and soldiers loaded their weapons. Every movement carried a ritual weight, as though they were preparing not only for battle but for history. Fear lived in their hearts, but so did a fire that no other species could match. The journey was long, silent, tense. Ships glided through asteroid fields, slipped past patrols, and crossed void storms. Once, an enemy scout nearly discovered them, but Mara's fighter intercepted it in a flash of light, tearing it apart before it could send word. When she returned to the Valkyrie, her hands were still trembling. but her voice was steady. One more ghost silenced. Finally, the outpost appeared, a colossal structure of black steel anchored to a dying star. Hundreds of Zirth ships guarded it, their jagged forms circling like predators. Energy lines pulsed across the station, feeding fleets that would soon strike at Alliance worlds. If the humans destroyed it, the enemy would feel their presence like a blade in the dark. Kyle gave the order. All ships, strike! The void erupted in fire. Human cruisers surged forward, their weapons blazing. Fighters launched in swarms, weaving through enemy lines with reckless skill. Mara led the first wave, her voice cutting through comms like steel. For Earth, strike true! The battle was chaos and thunder. Missiles tore through the dark, explosions painted the void in burning light. Human ships moved differently than any other fleet, improvising, daring, diving into danger. They used the asteroid belt to their advantage, turning rocks into cover and weapons. Every maneuver spoke of desperation sharpened into brilliance. The Zirth fought back with ruthless fury. Their ships were larger, stronger, their beams slicing through human armor. One by one, human vessels went silent, their names echoing in the comms before fading into static. Yet no one retreated. Every loss only fueled the survivors to strike harder. On the bridge of the Valkyrie, Kale stood unshaken as alarms blared around him. "Push forward," he ordered. "Break their guard. The outpost falls tonight." Mara's fighter squadron darted through enemy fire, engines screaming. She led them straight into the heart of the storm, weaving between enemy cruisers, dodging. Beams by the width of a wing, her missiles struck true, tearing apart the defense grid. "Clear path!" she shouted. "Hit them now!" The Ashes, a human battleship, surged forward, its captain speaking his last words over the comms. "For those who burned." The ship rammed into the outpost, detonating its core in a burst of blinding light. The shock wave tore through enemy lines, scattering Zirth ships like shattered glass. Cheers roared across human channels, but the battle was not over. The Zirth mothership descended, a colossal fortress of jagged steel, larger than any human vessel. Its weapons lit the void, tearing apart 3 cruisers in an instant. Fear gripped the fleet, but Kyle's voice cut through. "Hold! We are the storm. Strike with everything." The humans fought with desperate brilliance. Cruisers circled the mothership, hammering it from all sides. Mara and her squadron dived toward its weak points, dodging beams that lit the darkness like suns. One by one, their weapons tore into the giant. Its armor cracked, its engines faltered. Finally, a single missile from Mara's fighter pierced deep into its core. The explosion bloomed like a new star, consuming the beast in fire. Silence followed. The outpost was gone, the mothership destroyed. Human ships drifted, broken but alive, their scars glowing in the fading light of battle. Across the fleet, voices rose, not in laughter, not in celebration, but in something deeper. Pride. Kale looked out over the wreckage, his voice steady. "We are no longer the hunted. From this day, we are the fire in the void." And so, the message spread. To the Zirth, it was a warning. To the galaxy, it was a revelation. Humanity had not only returned, they had struck into the heart of their enemy and survived. The Council could no longer ignore them. The galaxy could no longer doubt them. Earth was gone. But its children carried its fire, and that fire had just set the stars ablaze. The human fleet drifted in silence after the great battle. The wreckage of the Zirth mothership still burned in the distance, pieces of black steel glowing like dying stars. The humans had won, but the price was heavy. Dozens of ships were gone, their crews lost forever in the void. The names of the fallen echoed in the hearts of every survivor. On the bridge of the Valkyrie, Admiral Kale Stone stood motionless. His face was carved from stone, his eyes fixed on the glowing debris. Outside, Around him, the crew worked in silence, their joy tempered by grief. The victory was undeniable, yet the cost was written in blood. Mara Vance walked onto the bridge, her flight suit scorched, her hair damp with sweat. Her fighter was damaged, but she had returned. She removed her helmet and stood beside Kale, her voice quiet. "We struck them down, Admiral. The galaxy will know humanity is alive." Kale turned his eyes to her. "Yes, they will know. But the ones we lost tonight, they will never see it." Mara lowered her gaze. She thought of the ashes, the ship that had rammed into the outpost to deliver the final blow. She remembered the captain's last words, "for those who burned." That sacrifice haunted her, yet it also burned inside her like a second heartbeat. Across the fleet, survivors gathered in silence. They stood in hangars in barracks on the decks of scarred ships. No music played, no speeches were made. Instead, names were spoken, one after another, whispered into the dark. Children of Earth promised to carry those names forward, to etch them into steel, to paint them on the hulls of new ships. For humanity had learned that memory itself was a weapon. Meanwhile, in the halls of the Council, panic spread. Reports of the battle shocked the galaxy. The races that once mocked humans now whispered their name in fear and awe. The humans had not only survived, but had destroyed a Zirth mothership deep in enemy space. Some council members demanded to meet with Kale. Others demanded his fleet be destroyed before humanity grew stronger. The council argued endlessly, as they always did. But Kale did not wait for their approval. Humanity had already been abandoned once. They would never beg for help again. In the hidden bases, engineers worked day and night, reforging the broken ships. Survivors from across the galaxy began to join the human cause. Refugees from conquered worlds sought the strength of humanity, believing the fire of Earth could protect them. Humanity was no longer fighting for itself alone. It was becoming a banner of resistance. Mara saw this change with her own eyes. She trained pilots who were not born on Earth but swore loyalty to its memory. A young alien child whose planet had also burned under the Zirth asked her, "Why do you fight so hard when your world is gone?" Mara knelt and placed her hand on the child's shoulder. "Because Earth still lives here," she said, pressing her hand over her heart. "As long as we fight, Earth is never gone." The child's eyes filled with tears, but also with courage. Yet Kale knew the storm was far from over. The Zirth would not stay silent. Their pride had been wounded, their fleets humiliated. Soon they would gather in force greater than ever before. The next battle would not be a raid or a strike. It would be a war. He stood once more in the war room, the star map glowing before him. Red spread across half the galaxy, the shadow of the Zirth growing larger. His officers gathered, weary but unbroken. "They will come for us," Kale said. His voice was steady, yet heavy. "They will throw their full weight against us, hoping to crush us before we rise further. And when they come, the Council will watch from their safe worlds. We will stand alone." Mara stepped forward, her eyes fierce. "Then we meet them head on. Let them come with all their fury. We will not run. We will show them that humanity does not break." A silence fell. The officers looked at Kale, waiting for his word. He placed his hand on the table, the holographic stars glowing against his skin. "Prepare the fleets," he said. "Gather every ship, every pilot, every soul willing to fight. The galaxy may doubt us, the Council may despise us, but when the Zirth arrive, it will be humanity who stands in their path." The officers saluted, their voices rising as one. For a moment, the war room seemed to tremble with their unity. Later, when Kyle walked the halls of the Valkyrie, he paused to look at the names painted along the walls. Names of the dead, names of the lost, names of Earth. He touched the cold steel and whispered, "We carry you with us, always." Outside, the fleet gathered once more, scarred but stronger. New ships rose from hidden shipyards, their engines glowing with fury. Humanity was no longer a scattered remnant. It was an army, forged in grief and bound by unshakable will. The galaxy had thought Earth was gone forever, but in truth, Earth had become something greater than a world. It had become a fire carried in every heart, a storm carried in every ship, and that storm was preparing to face the darkness once more. The days that followed were heavy with silence. Every ship in the fleet carried both pride and grief. Every soldier carried both fire and fear. Humanity had proved its strength, but the survivors knew the truth. The greatest war had not yet begun. The Zhirth would not forget their humiliation, and when they returned, they would come with endless force. Admiral Cale Stone sat in the command chamber of the Valkyrie. The holographic map glowed before him, showing dozens of red zones across the galaxy. The Zhirth Empire was vast, their fleets countless. Humanity had struck a blow, but it was only a scratch on a monster. Kyle's eyes narrowed as he studied the map. Around him, his officers waited in silence. "They will come for us soon," Kyle said. His voice was steady, but it carried weight. "We cannot wait for the storm. We must prepare. We must unite, or we will vanish like dust." Mara Vance, standing by his side, spoke with fire in her tone. "The Council will not help us. They are afraid of the Zhirth, but they are also afraid of us. They see humans as dangerous, unpredictable." Cale gave a bitter smile. "Then we give them a choice. Join us, or watch the galaxy fall." The officers nodded, though some looked uneasy. Humanity was small compared to the grand races of the Alliance. Yet in their hearts, every one of them knew humanity had something the others lacked: the will to keep fighting when all hope was lost. Far from the flagship, new ships were being built in hidden bases. Engineers worked with burned hands, mechanics slept on the floor beside their tools, and pilots trained until their bodies shook. The sound of hammers, engines, and voices became a song of survival. Every survivor, human or alien refugee, carried the same thought: we will not burn again. Among them was Leora, a young alien woman whose world had been destroyed by the Zhirth. She was not human, yet she carried herself like one. She trained as a pilot under Mara's command, and though she was quiet, her determination burned like a star. Mara saw herself in the girl, fearful but unbroken. One evening, as the fleet drifted near the ruins of a dead world, Mara found Leora staring out a viewport. The shattered planet glowed faintly, its broken pieces spinning in silence. "Was this your home?" Mara asked gently. Leora nodded. Her voice trembled. "Yes. I used to dream of seeing the oceans again. Now there is nothing but stone and ash." Mara placed a hand on her shoulder. "I know that pain. Earth is gone too. But listen to me, Leora. Home is not only soil and sky. It is memory. It is courage. As long as you carry it, your world is not dead." Tears filled Leora's eyes, but a small smile touched her lips. "Then I will carry it into battle." The words gave Mara strength. She realized that humanity's fight had become something larger. They were no longer just avengers of Earth, they were guardians of every lost world. Meanwhile, whispers spread across the galaxy. The Council argued endlessly. Some demanded that humanity be stopped before they grew too strong. Others demanded support, claiming humanity was the only shield against the Zhirth. The debates grew louder, but Cale did not waste time listening. He sent envoys to the refugee fleets, offering alliance not through words, but through shared sacrifice. Soon, ships that were not human began to gather under humanity's banner. Small, scattered groups, broken but eager for vengeance, chose to fight alongside the children of Earth. The fleet grew, not in numbers to match the Zhirth, but in unity and spirit. Kale watched this with pride. He stood before the combined crews one day, his voice echoing across transmitters to every ship. "You come from many worlds," he said. "Some of your homes are ashes, some still burn, some still survive in fear. But today, you all fight under one banner, not Earth, not any single world, but the banner of survival, of freedom. The Shearth believe they can erase us. We will prove them wrong." The words struck like fire. Across the fleet, soldiers cheered, mechanics wept, pilots clenched their fists. For the first time, they felt they were not alone, but the storm was already moving. Scouts brought news. The Shearth were gathering in numbers beyond imagination. Entire armadas moved like black shadows across the stars. They were not just coming for humanity's fleet. They were coming to erase every trace of rebellion. No. The Valkyrie's bridge, Mara leaned toward Kyle. "When they arrive, we cannot fight them head-on. We will be crushed." Kyle's eyes hardened. "Then we fight with our minds, not just our guns. Humanity has always survived by turning weakness into strength. We will do it again." A silence fell. Every officer knew what he meant. Traps, strategies, sacrifices. They would not win by power. They would win by being unpredictable, by fighting as only humans could. That night, Kyle walked alone through the observation deck. The stars burned brightly, endless and cold. He thought of Earth, the oceans, the forests, the cities, now all gone. He whispered into the silence, "We carry you, always. And when the storm comes, we will not bow." Behind him, Mara joined quietly. She looked at him, her voice steady. "Admiral, when the time comes, I will fly until my last breath. Humanity does not stand alone." Kyle looked at her, and for the first time in many days, allowed a small smile. "No, we never did." Far across the void, the Shearth armadas moved like waves of darkness. The galaxy trembled, but for the first time, a spark burned in the shadows, small, fragile, yet unstoppable. That spark was humanity, and the storm was coming. The fleet drifted in silence, hidden in the shadow of a dying star. Every ship carried the weight of fear, yet beneath that fear burned a stronger fire, defiance. Humanity had gathered survivors from many worlds, but now the true test was near. The Shearth armadas were moving closer, dark storms on the edge of the galaxy. Admiral Kale Stone stood in the war chamber, his eyes locked on the holographic map. Dozens of red symbols spread across the projection, each one a Shearth fleet larger than his own entire force. Yet Kale's face did not break. His hands were steady, his voice calm. "They think they outnumber us," Kale said, his words carrying to every officer in the chamber. "But numbers are not everything. They do not understand us. They never have, and that will be their mistake." Mara Vance, standing at his side, studied the map with sharp eyes. "If they catch us here, we are finished. We must strike first, hit where it hurts and vanish before they can crush us." Kale nodded slowly. "Yes, we will fight like ghosts in the dark. Strike, bleed them, then disappear. By the time they understand, their fleets will already be weakened." Across the fleet, preparations began. Engineers loaded hidden charges into transport ships. Pilots studied routes through asteroid belts and gas clouds, learning every dangerous path that could be turned into a weapon. Soldiers sharpened their blades, not because blades would save them in space, but because holding steel gave them courage. Among them, young Leora sat in the hangar, her fighter gleaming under the lights. She ran her hands along the metal, whispering as if speaking to a friend. "You will fly with me, and together we will burn the enemy from the sky." Her voice was soft, but her eyes burned. Mara found her there and crouched beside her. "Are you ready for this?" she asked gently. Leora hesitated, then whispered, I am afraid. Mara gave a faint smile. So am I. Fear does not make us weak. It makes us sharper. Remember that. The girl nodded, her heart steadier now. When the order finally came, the fleet moved like shadows through the void. Their first target was not the strongest Zirth base, but the one most vulnerable, a supply hub orbiting a frozen moon. It was guarded by dozens of warships, but Kale's plan was not to face them head-on. The Valkyrie emerged from the nebula first, firing bright lances of energy to draw attention. The Shearth responded at once, rushing toward the human flagship, like predators sensing blood. They did not see the transports slipping silently behind them. With perfect timing, the transports unleashed their hidden weapons. Explosions ripped through the supply hub, fire consuming the Zirth storage bays. Fuel ignited, ships burst apart, and in moments, the frozen moon's surface glowed red with destruction. On the Valkyrie's bridge, Kyle stood tall as the alarms echoed. Now we vanish, he commanded. The fleet dove back into the nebula, engines burning hot, slipping into hidden tunnels of dust and ice. The Shearth pursued, but the nebula swallowed them. By the time they escaped, humanity was gone, leaving only wreckage and flames behind. Cheers erupted across the human fleet. They had struck the enemy and lived. For the first time, they had shown that the Zirth could bleed. But Kale did not smile. His eyes were fixed on the map again. This is only the beginning, he murmured. They will come harder now. They will not underestimate us again. He was right. The Zirth responded with fury, hunting the human fleet across the stars. Worlds shook as their armadas moved, leaving destruction in their wake. Yet every time, Kale and his captains slipped, through their grasp, striking quick, striking hard, then disappearing. The galaxy began to notice. Refugees whispered that humanity fought where no one else dared. Broken colonies heard tales of Kale's stone and his ghost fleet. Even in the council chambers, voices began to shift. Some still called for humanity's end, but others now spoke of hope. For Mara, the war was personal. She led squadrons through battles where survival seemed impossible, and each time she returned, her eyes carried more fire. Her bond with Leora grew, not of blood, but of shared scars. The girl learned fast, flying with courage, her fear turning into strength. One night, as the fleet rested in the dark of a hidden asteroid field, Kale addressed the crews once more. His voice was deep, steady, carrying across the transmitters to every ship. We are hunted, yes. We are small compared to them, yes. But we are not broken. Every time they chase us, they waste their strength. Every time we strike, they feel fear. And fear is a weapon. Remember this. Humanity does not surrender. We endure. We adapt. And in the end, we prevail. The words lit a fire in every heart. Pilots clenched their fists, engineers wiped sweat and smiled, soldiers pressed their hands over their hearts. They believed, not just in Kale, but in themselves. Far beyond their hiding place, the Zirth armadas gathered once more. This time they were not moving blindly. They were learning, adapting, preparing to crush humanity with overwhelming force. The final clash was drawing closer. But in the shadows of the stars, the human fleet burned brighter than ever. Broken, scattered, wounded, but unyielding. For the first time in ages, the galaxy whispered not of fear, but of hope. And that hope carried a name: humanity. The stars trembled with fire as the final battle began. Across the dark expanse, the Zirth armadas stretched like endless black waves, thousands of warships burning with crimson light. Against them, the human fleet was a fraction, fragile as glass before the storm. Yet in that fragile glass was steel no enemy could see. Humanity had come not to survive, but to stand and to fight. Admiral Kyle Stone stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie, his hands clasped behind his back. His face was calm, yet his eyes carried the weight of every lost world, every burning colony, every voice that had once cried for mercy. Around him, the crew worked in silence, the hum of controls mixing with the distant heartbeat of war drums. "They will come at us with everything," Mara Vance said quietly at his side. Her jaw was tight, her gaze fixed on the red swarm moving closer. Kyle nodded. "Good. Let them." The fleet spread out into formation, thin lines of human ships standing like spears before a storm. The Zhirth came fast, their weapons glowing like suns, their size overwhelming. To the galaxy watching from far systems, the end seemed certain. Humanity would be erased, as the Council had predicted long ago. But Kale had a plan no Council mind could dream of. "Signal every ship," he ordered. His voice was steady, calm as stone. "We hold until the moment comes. No fear, no hesitation. Today, we show them what it means to fight humanity." The first wave struck. Explosions ripped across the void, shaking hulls and tearing ships apart. Entire cruisers vanished in fire, and screams filled the comms. Yet the human fleet held formation, answering every strike with sharp precision. Fighters darted through enemy lines like arrows of light, carving holes before vanishing into the dark. In the middle of chaos, Leora's fighter blazed forward. Her hands shook on the controls, but her voice was steady as she spoke into the channel. "For Earth, for the fallen, we fight until the stars go dark." Her squadron followed, fearless, striking deeper into the enemy mass. Mara guided them with sharp commands, her ship weaving like fire through the storm. She fought not only as a commander, but as a guardian, protecting those who followed her into death and beyond. Still, the Zhirth pressed harder, their endless numbers pushing closer to the heart of the fleet. Kale's officers turned to him, fear in their eyes. "We can't hold much longer," one cried. Kale's gaze never wavered. "We do not hold. We break them." He raised his hand, and across the fleet, hidden commands activated. The human ships had carried more than weapons. They carried sacrifice. Buried deep in their hulls were charges of compressed plasma, rigged to ignite the very fabric of space. Not bombs to destroy ships, but a trap to tear open the battlefield itself. As the Zhirth pressed in, believing victory was near, Kyle gave the order. "Now!" The charges detonated. Light ripped through the void, tearing rifts of burning plasma between the fleets. The battlefield itself became a storm, walls of fire rising like oceans, swallowing entire enemy squadrons. The Zhirth panicked, their perfect formations collapsing into chaos as they tried to escape the inferno. But humanity had planned for this. Their smaller ships danced through the fire, weaving along safe corridors mapped by Kyle's strategists. To the enemy it looked like madness, humans flying into flames, only to emerge unscathed, striking with precision. The galaxy watching from afar gasped. The impossible was happening. The hunted had become the hunters. Mara's voice rang across the comms. "Strike now! Break them while they burn!" Leora's squadron dove through a collapsing rift, blasting the enemy flagship's engines. Fire burst through its hull, and for the first time, the Zhirth armadas faltered. Their commanders screamed, their ships breaking formation, their pride shattering under the weight of human defiance. Still, the cost was heavy. Human ships burned with the enemy, sacrifices made in silence. Every explosion was a name, a story, a life given for the dawn of freedom. Yet the fleet did not waver. The spirit of Earth carried them forward, unbroken. At the heart of the chaos, Kale stood tall. His eyes burned with fire as he gave the final command. "All ships, advance!" "End this!" The Valkyrie surged forward, leading the charge. Human ships struck like lightning, cutting through the fractured enemy. One by one, the great warships of the Zhirth fell, torn apart not by numbers, but by courage. The battle that was meant to erase humanity became the battle that would mark its rebirth. When the fires dimmed at last, silence filled the stars. Wreckage drifted where once an armada had stood. The Zhirth, broken and defeated, fled into the void. Humanity's fleet, battered and bloodied, still burned with light on. The Valkyrie, the crew stared at the shattered battlefield. Tears filled their eyes, not only for victory, but for all who had fallen to win it. Mara leaned against the rail, whispering, "We did it! Against everything, we did it!" Leora's voice crackled through the comms, weak but unbroken. "Admiral, the galaxy will know now. They will know what it means when humanity stands." Kyle closed his eyes for a moment. Then he turned to his crew, his voice echoing across every ship that still lived. "Today we were underestimated. Today we were hunted. But we endured. And now the galaxy will remember, humanity does not bow, humanity does not break. We rise. Always." The survivors cheered, their voices echoing like thunder across the stars. The galaxy, watching in stunned silence, felt the shift of history. Humanity, the broken and forgotten, had become the fire that could not be extinguished. And, as the dawn of a new age rose across the stars, one truth burned brighter than all. When the galaxy laughed at Earth's fall, they never imagined humanity would return, not as victims, but as victors.